And for more on this, joining us live now is the Shadow Assistant Minister for Infrastructure, the Liberal Senator Matt O'Sullivan. Senator, thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming in. What do you make of this? The Treasury Secretary suggesting that US allies might need to decouple from China on an economic front.
Thanks, Ash. I really see this through the lens of opportunity. I think if we can diversify, expose ourselves to even greater and more markets, then that's only good for Australia and good for our economy. So I don't necessarily see that as a negative. I think the more opportunities that we can create across the globe, it's absolutely imperative. And I just urge the Trade Minister to get a wriggle on and actually develop these partnerships and these relationships and these offtake agreements that are necessary across the globe, because that will only strengthen Australia's economy.
Considering the trade environment and the relationship between China and US, do you have any concerns about Chinese ownership of mines, major projects, processing plants that they have in Australia?
Hey, before we go any further, why don't you consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel so you can get more content just like this.
Right from when the mining industry started in Australia, we've always relied upon foreign investment across our resources projects. So I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned about if there's any suggestion of any coercion or interference. And I think, we will always welcome investment in Australia so long as Australia retains its sovereignty.
What's your expectation around what sort of agreement we might see from the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, when he meets with the US President Donald Trump on this front of critical minerals?
Well, firstly, it's great that the Prime Minister has this meeting coming up with the US President. It's been nearly a year since the President was elected, and so it's good that this meeting is finally happening. This is an important opportunity for him to be able to present Australia and the opportunity that Australia can play. I think AUKUS is going to obviously be an important subject, and this discussion around critical minerals is part of that and part of securing Australia's future. Western Australia has enormous benefit to gain out of the supply of critical minerals across the world, and indeed, through the United States, that's only going to mean good things for Australia, and Western Australia indeed.
And what's your view on this critical minerals strategic reserve? Is the government on the right track there?
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of detail, Ash, to be fair, about what the government's actually proposing. I'd be concerned if it meant that there was going to be like a price floor, because that ultimately just means that subsidies are going to have to be in place. I think the government should really be focusing on reducing the cost for businesses, for these explorers and miners and producers to be able to operate here in Australia. The cost of the green and red tape, just the approvals, processes, energy, of course, is a major input into the cost of delivering on these projects. So I'd much rather see the government focus on reducing the cost of doing business in Australia. If what it means is offtake agreements with the United States, I think that's a positive and welcome move. If that gives the surety for investment here in Australia, so that those offtake agreements are locked in and possibly price that comes with that. But I wouldn't want to see the government sort of set a floor or anything like that. I think the stockpiling and those sort of things concern me a bit. But if it's about creating those partnerships and those linkages, I think that's positive.
I've been lucky enough to interview a lot of West Australian politicians over the years, and 9 times out of 10, they whinge about a disconnect between WA, in particular in the resources sector, and politicians in Canberra. Is that still there, that gap, or do you think that there is now a real understanding?
Well, I actually said this in my first speech, that if you meet a Western Australian, you find a federalist. If you scratch a little deeper, you find a secessionist. And I think that's always going to be the way, and we'll always stand up fiercely for our state. And I think there often is a disconnect between those here in the West and on the East Coast. And we supply nearly 40% of our gross export product out of this state, which is obviously vital for Australia. I feel like sometimes we're not completely recognising that. In my portfolio of infrastructure, very disappointed at the level of infrastructure spent from the federal government in Western Australia. The last budget demonstrated that, and there's a real lack of forward planning for infrastructure in WA, and I think we've got to make sure we stand up. We do tend to be pretty loud though.
The Liberal Party, your colleagues have spent a lot of time talking about yourselves in the last few weeks. What did you make of James Patterson's comments the other night, saying that you basically need to stop apologising for the election loss?
I think talking about ourselves is the surefire way to get Australians turned off us. And so I don't necessarily want to add to that. But I think what I will say is that what we've got to get focused on is having debate around policy, and I don't think we should in any way shy away from having that debate publicly. The idea that we might do this behind closed doors means we're just listening to ourselves and we're just getting a bit of an echo chamber. But I think if we can engage with ideas, if now's not the time, having suffered a terrible loss at the last election and just following the last election, if now's not the time to engage in these sort of debates, then when is? And so, I don't know that that's exactly what James was actually saying, though. I think what we've got to do is make sure we're focused on the matters, the issues that really matter to all Australians.
Liberal Senator Matt O'Sullivan, good to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks, Ash.
Appreciate your time.
Cheers.
Authorised by Matt O'Sullivan, Liberal Party, Perth.